a mystery interstellar object that was spotted by astronomers last week. It could be the oldest comet ever seen. It's only the third time that we've actually detected an object that has come from beyond our solar system.
Something in deep space is flashing at us, and it is not acting like a comet. It is not shedding ice the way it should. It is not spinning the way it should. It is venting water in a part of space that is too cold for water to move. It is wrapped in metal that looks refined. And the only telescope image that made it look ordinary came from the source that gave us the least information. So the real question is simple. Did we just watch a built object pass through our system, and did someone choose not to tell us? The visitor that refused to behave. Astronomers were ready for a normal interstellar visitor. Oumuamua was strange, but it looked quiet. Borisov was a clean comet. 3I Atlas was supposed to be another icy rock from a distant star. The track was right, the speed was right, the path was open, which means it came from outside and would leave again. Then the image came in from the KEK Observatory in Hawaii, and nothing matched the template. The object was steady when it should have tumbled. Its light curve was smooth when it should have flickered. Most comets rotate in a messy way because ice vents on one side push them off balance. This one turned like a machine that had found its center. Then came the bigger shock. KEK measured a jet of water venting from the body while it was still in a region colder than 330 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit. At that distance, sunlight cannot warm an icy surface fast enough to make it explode in a plume. Water should have stayed locked in solid form, yet instruments recorded a burst that looked more like a pressure release than a random boil. That meant there was heat or a mechanism inside. Both are problems for a natural comet. What made observers uneasy was how many things were lining up. Perfect spin, clean light, a timed vent. Natural objects can be odd in one way. They do not tend to be odd in 5 ways at once. So teams at KEK, at the European Southern Observatory, and at ESA all tried to crush it back into the comet box. Maybe a buried volatile pocket. Maybe a crack that opened right when it rotated. Maybe a double core. But those models all depend on chaos. The real data was showing control. At the same time, European Space Agency craft saw brightness, pulses repeating every few hours. Not noise, not random glare, a rhythm. Bright dimension, over and over. The pulse lined up from different viewing angles which ruled out camera tricks. Something on the object was changing how it reflected light in a clean cycle. That is the kind of signature you see from rotating panels, or from a body that changes surface temperature on purpose. It is not what you see from a clump of ice. So astronomers did what they always do. They searched for the dull answer. Maybe it was a fragment. Maybe it was a contact binary. Maybe it was outgassing from a pocket of volatile gas no one had modeled yet. But every simple answer fell apart when the spectrographs came back. The object was showing nickel in a pure line, and it was not showing iron. Nature makes those two together. Stars forge them in the same zones. Asteroids mix them. Meteorites drop them side by side. 3I Atlas was showing nickel by itself, the way an alloy plant would make it. That was the moment the tone in the emails changed. You could still call it a comet in public. You could still say unusual behavior. But in private notes, people started to write the same words. Anomalous stability, industrial ratio, self-consistent modulation. Words you do not write for snowballs. Because if it is carrying refined metal, if it can time its own venting, if it can hold a steady rotation while crossing interstellar space, then we have to admit we are not just watching a rock. We are watching intent. That is when some researchers started to whisper, what if this is not a comet at all? And if it is not a comet, then who or what sent it toward us? Because if something from another system arrives dressed like a comet but moves like a device, Should we keep calling it a comet, or should we admit we are looking at the first deliberate object we have ever seen? The silence that made it stranger. When ESA released its first long-range frames from Mars orbit, the object looked faint but real. A light sphere with a breathing glow near the Martian sky. It was enough to start public interest. It was not enough to settle the science. Astronomers expected to see matching shots from NASA because Perseverance was in a perfect line to look up and shoot the same patch of space. Nothing came. The explanation was routine. Data portals were not being updated. Budgets were paused. Teams were waiting. That sometimes happens. But it happened on the week an interstellar object with non-standard chemistry was moving past Mars. People noticed. If nothing odd was in those images, they would have been easy to post. Independent specialists took what raw feeds they could scrape from public channels. Some stitched long exposures together. When they did the smudge, they saw did not look like a fluffy comet. It looked like a short cylinder catching sunlight along one edge. That could be artifact. It could be cosmic rays. It could be motion blur. It could also be the real shape. The shape that bigger agencies chose not to highlight. Forums started to tag the issue with one question. Where is the rest of the data? As the days passed, a second issue rose. When ESA, KEK, and ground units compared brightness patterns, they all saw the same timing. The object brightened in a clean sequence. If one telescope makes that claim, you can doubt it. If 3 different platforms see the same rhythm, the discussion changes. Inside labs, the talk was far less calm. If light pulses match rotation, you are watching a normal body. If light pulses match no simple rotation but line up like a code, you are watching something that could be sending. A few leaks from the Jet Propulsion Laboratory said the models being run were not Comet models at all. They were models that tested what would happen if a body tuned its surface to maintain orientation. Some of those same notes asked why the tail on early frames seemed to point the wrong way. Tails always point away from the sun. This one seemed to fold back against the orbit, as if something was controlling how dust and gas left the surface. That was when the silence from official sources stopped sounding like a paperwork delay and started sounding like management. When a story is small, it stays in the public feed. When a story is big and unclear, it gets paused. Which raises the question the public always asks. If it was normal, why hide it? If it was normal, why not show the clearest frame of the year? If the raw shots captured a body that was more ship than Snowball, then hiding it buys time. Time to model, time to brief, time to decide how much of the sky we tell people about. So what was on those missing frames that made releasing nothing safer than releasing something blurry that citizens could enhance on their own? The life-machine paradox. The strangest data came from an angle no one expected. KEK did a spectrographic pass across the body to see what gases and metals it was shedding. A natural comet carries water, carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, a mix of dust, some iron, some silicates. 3I. Atlas lit up with nickel. Clean, sharp, strong. The kind of line you get from refined metal. The kind of line you get from a process, not the kind you expect from a frozen traveler that has been in deep space for millions of years. To make nickel that pure on Earth, you use pressure and heat in a sealed system. You do it inside machines. You do not do it in a vacuum colder than anything on our planet. Then another signal showed up on wider scans. Cyanide. Not dumped across the whole body, but in a ring that circled it. Cyanide is a poison to us, but it is also a seed. In old Earth oceans, it helped build amino acids. It is one of the small molecules that lead to life. Scientists stared at the readout and saw 2 things that do not belong in the same sentence. Engineered metal and life-linked chemistry, one hard and hot, one delicate and reactive, both in a narrow band around an object that was pulsing light at us. ESA analysts called it the dual band anomaly. A team in Arizona gave it a better name. That combination leads to three options. The first is extreme and simple. The object is not natural. It was built and it carries life-related material the way a seed ship would. The second is softer. The object is natural, but it passed through a region where industry and biology already existed and picked up traces. The third is the one that made everyone uneasy. The object is old technology designed to sow prebiotic chemistry in new systems while keeping itself intact with metal that never rusts. A wandering gift from a culture that wanted to plant life in new starfields. Why did the cyanide release in a rhythm that matched the light pulses and the water vent? Why did it not vent once and stop? Why did it vent in steady bursts across the equator like breath? That kind of pattern is control. Control means intent. Intent means design. And if it is designed, the question flips. We are no longer asking how a comet did this. We are asking who needed both life chemistry and refined nickel in the same hull, and what they hoped we would see when it passed. If an object shows the fingerprints of both biology and metallurgy at the same time, do we still get to say accident? Or do we finally have to say someone was working out there? The water jet that looked like a wake-up. The water eruption was the moment many patient astronomers said this is not random. The object was still outside the warm inner zones, where ice turns to gas. Yet spectrographs saw a plume of water molecules rushing away from the body at about 400 miles per hour. After the first spike, the emission did not collapse. It settled into a slow misting around the middle of the object. Natural comets throw material off in messy fans. This one circled its own waste with vapor like it was balancing itself. That shape looked a lot like a belt of reaction, a way to stabilize spin or shed heat. Modelers at ESA and Caltech tried to force a natural answer. They ran internal heating scenarios. They tried radioactive decay. They tried friction from tidal forces. None of it fit because the timing of the water matched the timing of the brightness pulses. That means the light and the water likely shared a source. Either a rotating hotspot or a system that opened and shut on a schedule. People compared it to geothermal vents. Some compared it to primitive reactor cycles. Some even likened it to a propulsion bleed. But every path reached the same wall. A natural comet cannot coordinate light, water, and temperature like that in deep cold. What made it stranger was how clean the sequence was. The first plume hit hard. The second was smaller. Then the output settled as if the object was finding its operating level. That is not flare and die. That is start and regulate. Some analysts noted that the ramp-up happened right when several assets were watching it. That is awkward timing if it was random. It led to a quiet question. Did sunlight trigger it? Did our instruments trigger it? Or did its own timer tell it this was the right system to wake in? The memo that leaked from a European review panel used the careful phrasing. Self-modulating activity detected. That is a polite way to say it seems to be managing itself. Not dying, not flaring, not cracking apart. Managing. And once you see a body regulating itself, you have to ask what made it start and what it plans to do next. If the water jet was not a glitch and not a melt and not a lucky crack, then what told that object to start working in our neighborhood and not in the millions of miles before it reached us? The tail that pointed wrong and the fight that followed. Old comet rules are simple. The tail points away from the sun. It does that because sunlight and particles push material in one direction. When analysts enhanced early TESS frames of 3 I-Atlas, they did not see that. They saw light and expelled material leaning the wrong way. That is not what dust does. That is what controlled scattering does. Either the surface was directing light so that it looked like that, or the outgassing was being steered. Both are advanced. Both are deliberate. Once people noticed that lean, they went back over the frames in slower steps. The angle did not glide. It seemed to jump. A few degrees here, a few degrees there. That is how small thrusts show up. Not as a soft bend, but as staged corrections. Natural explanations try to keep up. Patchy ice can vent sideways. Crust can crack in awkward places. But those fixes have to work against the list of other oddities. Refined nickel, cyanide in a ring, a water belt that runs on a clock. At some point, the pile of exceptions starts to look like a pattern. By the time this was compared with KEK and ESA runs, the debate had gone public. One group said every part of this could be explained with rare mixes of volatiles and odd spin and funny crust. They said calling it artificial was not science. The other group said you cannot keep calling every non-natural pattern natural just because you fear saying the other word. They pointed to the nickel. They pointed to the cyanide ring. They pointed to the rhythmic water. Then they pointed to a small loss of speed the Mars Express team logged, a change too small to blame on gravity alone. Online, the split was sharp. Some viewers said it was just like Oumuamua and that we were repeating the same arguments. Some said this one was clearer because we saw it in multiple bands and because it seemed to respond to solar energy in tuned cycles. Hashtags started. People asked for raw live feeds. Others asked for a mission. If we cannot agree on what it is, send something to go look. A few mission planners even floated using a current spacecraft and bending its path to pass near the object before it left for deep space. That idea made sense to explorers. It scared people who watch cost and risk. If this object is adjusting to stay in view of certain planets or probes, is it observing us the way we are observing it? And if it is, what is it writing down about us? What if it was always meant to pass here? There is a final possibility that most agencies do not like to write. That 3i Atlas did not wander in. That it was on a route. That the route included a pass inside our system. That the pass included a show, light pulses, water jets, chemical signatures that force any technical species to look twice. And that part of the show was the silence. Delayed public data, nervous agencies. A good way to test if the locals are capable of sharing. If it was a relic, then someone long gone built something meant to coast from star to star and tend a payload of life chemistry as it went. If it was active, then someone not gone yet sent a probe that can regulate itself, broadcast through reflected light, and test how much attention the locals pay. Both options are heavy. Both say the same thing. We are not the only mines to have mixed metal and organics in one hull. We are only the latest to be forced to name it. Add one more layer. Maybe the real test is not if we can detect it. We already did. Maybe the test is if we can coordinate around it. Do we pool ESA, NASA, JAXA, private scopes, and publish every frame? Or do we let jurisdiction slow the answer until the object is gone? A probe that has crossed interstellar space does not just sample dust. It measures how fast a world can agree that the sky has changed. So what do? We can pretend it was a strange comet and let it go. We can send a craft and risk losing it for a long shot at history. We can demand every spectrogram and every Mars frame and make the hidden data public. Or we can do what we usually do. Argue until the object is past Jupiter and call the argument science. But the object will not care. It will keep moving. It will leave the sun behind. If it came with a message and we failed to answer, we will not get another try with this one. If an interstellar traveler passed our door, showed us metal, breath, light and rhythm, and we still filed it under unusual Comet, what does that say about who is really not ready for contact? So, what do you think? Was 3i Atlas a rare frozen wanderer with odd chemistry? Or was it a probe carrying both tools and seeds from a mind older than ours? Tell me in the comments which side you are on and what would make you switch. And if you want the next file when another object blinks at us, like this video, hit subscribe and stay ready in case the sky was not a silence after all.